are listening to the most comprehensive paranormal archive on the internet.
Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight I am continuing my series review, The Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website. And that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. Support is never expected but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making this show. There are many ways to support the show. You can share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platforms. Really appreciate that at this point. I'd love to get it out there more. You can also sign up for the Patreon feed and get all the extra content there for as little as $1 a month. And you can also check out the merchandise store and get all kinds of shirts and some other items there with designs made by friends of the show. Please follow friends of the show. That would include Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel and is the co-host of this show with me on Saturdays, whenever she's able to make it. Ricky of the Anything is Possible podcast, who usually does a paranormal-themed show on Sundays, and I join him for those. And Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio, which I call into a lot, and the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP, Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows, as well as my own, 24/7, online for free. A couple of things to keep in mind as I begin, once I begin reading here again, from The Book of the Damned by Charles Fort. You and or I may not agree with the words and thoughts of Charles Fort. So just keep that in mind. There's been a couple of times where I've kind of not been happy about reading some of the words I found, but not too many times. Overall, it's been decent. And that happens, especially since I haven't actually read the whole book before. I've done a summary of it, but not actually listened to the whole book before. So, also, there may be some things in here that he talks about that were mysterious to him that are not mysterious to us anymore because of advancements in technology and science over the last century or so since these books came out. And also, last thing is I will mispronounce names and places and words, and I apologize for that in advance. It is not easy to say everything correctly, especially since some of the words and names in these in Fort's books are not even in English. So, let me get back to the material here, and we'll get back on this. Let's see. So continuing on. If we are in harmony with a new dominant, or the spirit of a new era, in which exclusionism must be overthrown, if we have data of many obscurations that have occurred, not only upon the moon, but upon our own Earth, as convincing of vast intervening bodies, usually invisible, as any regularized, predicted eclipse, one looks up at the sky. It seems incredible that, say, at the distance of the moon, there could be, but be invisible, a solid body, say, the size of the moon. One looks up at the moon at a time when only a crescent of it is visible. The tendency is to build up the rest of it in one's mind. But the unilluminated part looks as vacant as the rest of the sky, and it's of the same blueness as the rest of the sky. There is a vast area of solid substance before one's eyes. It's indistinguishable from the sky. In some of our little lessons upon the beauties of modesty and humility, we have picked out The basic arrogances: tail of a peacock, horns of a stag, dollars of a capitalist, eclipses of astronomers. Though I have no desire for the job, I'd engage to list hundreds of instances in which the report upon an expected eclipse has been sky overcast or weather unfavorable. In our super Hibernia, the unfavorable has been construed as the favorable. Some time ago, when we were lost, because we had not recognized our own dominant, when we were still of the unchosen and unlikely to be more malicious than we now are. I'm sorry, and likely to be more malicious than we are now. Or now are, there we go. Words are hard. Because we have noted a steady tolerance creeping into our attitude. If astronomers are not to blame, but are only correlates to a dominant, we advertised a predicted eclipse that did not occur at all. Now, without any especial feeling, except that of recognition of the fate of all attempted absolutism, we give the instance, noting that, though such an evil thing to orthodoxy, it was orthodoxy that recorded the non-event. Monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, I'm guessing, 8-132. Remarkable appearances, in quotation marks here, remarkable appearances during the total eclipse of the moon on March 19th, 1848. And an extract, and then close quotation marks, in an extract from a letter from Mr. Forster. That's interesting. I've never seen Forstr. Of Bruges. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Bruges. It is said that, according to the writer's observations, at the time of the predicted total eclipse, the moon shone with about 3 times the intensity of the mean illumination of an eclipsed lunar disk. That the British Council at Ghent, I'm not sure, who did not know of the predicted eclipse, had written inquiring as to the, in quotation marks, blood red color of the moon. This is not very satisfactory to what used to be our malices. But there follows another letter from another astronomer, Walkey, W-A-L-K-E-Y, who had made observations at Clist St. Lawrence that instead of an eclipse, the moon became, as is printed in italics, in quotation marks here, most beautifully illuminated, rather tinged with a deep red, the moon being as perfect with light as if there had been no eclipse whatsoever, end quotation marks. I note that Chambers, in his work upon eclipses, gives Forster's letter in full, and not a mention of Walkey's letter. There is no attempt in monthly notices to explain upon the notion of greater distance of the moon and the Earth's shadow falling short, which would make as much trouble for astronomers, if that were not foreseen, as no eclipse at all. Also, there is no refuge in saying that virtually never, even in total eclipses, is the moon totally dark, in quotation marks, as perfect with light as if there had been no eclipse whatsoever, in quotation marks. It is said that at the time there had been an aurora borealis which might have caused the luminosity, without a datum that such an effect by an aurora had ever been observed upon the moon. But single instances, so an observation by Scott in the Antarctic, the force of this datum lies in my own acceptance, based upon especially looking up this point, that an eclipse 9/10 of totality has great effect, even though the sky be clouded. Scott, Voyage of the Discovery, Volume 2, page 215, in quotation marks. There may have been an eclipse of the sun, September 21st, 1903, as the almanac said, but we should, none of us, have liked to swear to the fact, in quotation marks. This eclipse had been set down at 9/10 of totality. The sky was overcast at the time. So it is not only that many eclipses, unrecognized by astronomers as eclipses, have occurred, but that intermediatism or impositivism breaks into their own seemingly regularized eclipses. Our data of unregularized eclipses, as profound as those that are conventionally or officially recognized to have occurred relatively to this Earth. In notes and queries, there are several allusions to intense darknesses that have occurred upon this Earth, quite as eclipses occur, but that are not referable to any known eclipsing body. Of course, there is no suggestion here that these darknesses may have been eclipses. My own acceptance is that if the 19th century, excuse me, anyone, let's see here, I'm sorry, if in the 19th century anyone had uttered such a thought as that, he'd have felt the blight of a dominant, that materialistic science was a jealous god, excluding, as works of the devil, all utterances against the seemingly uniform, irregular. I have a bit of a sore tooth tonight, so I'm sorry about if I'm a little bit off. And then I've got the cat making noises over here. It's not helping. Anyway, regular, periodic, that to, sorry, lost my spot, that to defy him would have brought on, withering by ridicule, shrinking away by publishers, contempt of friends and family, justifiable grounds for divorce, that one who would so defy would feel what unbelievers in relics of saints felt in an earlier age, what befell virgins who forgot to keep fires burning in a still earlier age, but that if he'd almost absolutely hold out just the same, new fixed star reported in monthly notices. Altogether, the point in positivism here is that by dominance and their correlates, quasi-existence strives for the positive state, aggregating around a nucleus, a dominant, systematized, lost my spot again, quasi-existence, oh boy, lost my spot. Okay, okay, we're going to start a little back here. New fixed star, sorry about that, reported in monthly notices. Altogether, the point in positivism here is that by dominance and their correlates, quasi-existence strives for the positive state, aggregating around a nucleus or a dominant, systematized members of a religion, a science, a society. But that individuals, in quotation marks, who do not surrender and submerge may of themselves highly approximate to positiveness, the fixed, the real, the absolute. A lot of that kind of talk goes over my head. That's okay. Let's see here. In Notes and Queries 2-4-139, there is an account of a darkness in Holland in the midst of a bright day, so intense and terrifying that panic-stricken persons lost their lives stumbling into the canals. Gentleman's Magazine 33-414. A darkness that came upon London, August 19th, 1763, in quotation marks, greater than at the great eclipse of 1748, close quotation marks. However, our preference is not to go so far back for data. For a list of historic, in quotation marks here, dark days, see Humboldt, Cosmos 1-120. Monthly Weather Review, March 1886-79. That according to the La Crosse Daily Republican of March 20th, 1886, darkness suddenly settled upon the city of Oshkosh, Wisconsin, at 3 p.m., March 19th. In 5 minutes, the darkness equaled that of midnight. Consternation. I think that some of us are likely to overdo our own superiority and the absurd fears of the Middle Ages. Oshkosh. People in the streets, rushing in all directions. Horses running away. Women and children running into cellars. Little modern touch after all. Gas meters instead of images and relics of saints. This darkness, which lasted from 8 to 10 minutes, occurred in a day that had been, in quotation marks, light but cloudy, in quotation marks. It passed from west to east, and brightness followed. Then came reports from towns to the west of Oshkosh that the same phenomenon had already occurred there. A wave, actually it says, quotation marks here, wave of total darkness, in quotation marks, had passed from west to east. Other instances I recorded in the monthly weather review, but as to all of those, or all of them, we have a sense of being pretty well eclipsed ourselves by the conventional explanation that the obscuring body was only a very dense mass of clouds. But some of the instances are interesting. Intense darkness at Memphis, Tennessee, for about 15 minutes at 10 a.m., December 2nd, 1904. In quotation marks, we are told that in some quarters a panic prevailed, and that some were shouting and praying and imagining that the end of the world had come, close quotation marks. Monthly Weather Review 32-522. At Louisville, Kentucky, March 7th, 1911, at about 8 a.m., duration about half an hour, had been raining moderately, and then hail had fallen. The intense blackness and general ominous appearance of the storm spread terror throughout the city. And that was in quotation marks. And then again, Monthly Weather Review 39-345. However, this merger between possible eclipses by unknown dark bodies and common terrestrial phenomena is formidable. Let's see here. So this paragraph is long that I'm at next. And we have less than a minute left. And it also goes on to the next page, so it could be even longer than I can tell it is right now. So we're going to stop there, but just talk about that. I do wonder if now there are some more current explanations for those kinds of situations, but it's still amazing that so many of those happen. I can't really think of any situations where that's happened to me in my lifetime. Not that that means a ton. It's only one person. But yeah, that's fascinating. These just huge bands of darkness moving through the sky, moving across the sky, I guess. That's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.